My husband brings women home every night, but this time he gave me an unexpected gift. A lie that left me speechless to make me jealous. My husband brings a different woman home every night. He spends the night with her and, in the morning, orders his men to get rid of her. This morning was no different. I stood outside Enrique's room, listening to the sounds escaping through the cracks of the door, and bitterly smiled. For me, this was nothing new, but I still felt a pang of sadness about the situation. When I came back to my senses, his bedroom door suddenly opened. Enrique stared at me intently. I immediately looked away and kept walking. Before I could get too far, I heard his voice ordering the men to take away the woman he had spent the night with. I let out a soft chuckle as I walked down the stairs. Yes, hearing that was already part of my routine. After all, he is a ruthless mafia boss, and I, Mariana Oliveira, am his wife. In the kitchen, I sat down to eat. The maid was ready to serve me, and the armed men roamed the house, a constant reminder of who he was. Mariana, get ready. Enrique's voice caught my attention. I turned and saw him approaching my seat. For what? I asked lazily. He sat in the chair next to me and started eating. Today is my parents' birthday. They're throwing a costume party and want us to attend, he said emotionlessly while continuing to eat alone. I nodded and followed him in silence, as we always did when we were together. Even though we were married, we acted like complete strangers. I'll bring your dress later, he said, looking at me while wiping his mouth. I nodded mechanically and took a sip of water. He was about to get up when I decided to speak, lazily leaning back in the chair. Are we going to pretend to be a happy couple again? I asked sarcastically. He didn't answer. He simply left at 11 and left me alone in the kitchen. I faked a smile and shook my head. I wish there were always parties, I murmured to myself, thinking that those were the only moments when he seemed kind to me. The party was as extravagant as expected. I walked down the stairs confidently, wearing an elegant gold halter-neck dress and silver heels. Downstairs, Enrique was waiting for me, staring at me so intensely that if I didn't know him better, I would have thought he was enchanted. When I finally stood in front of him, I cleared my throat. Shall we? I asked, but he grabbed my arm. I shivered. He pulled me closer, and I held my breath. What is he doing? I thought. Then I felt something cold against my chest. A necklace. I blinked several times, incredulous, looking at him. Enrique took a step back with a neutral expression. What is this? I asked, frowning and looking at the necklace. Don't you know what it is? He replied sarcastically. My nervousness slowly faded. I rolled my eyes and looked back at the necklace. Despite the countless thoughts running through my mind, I simply said, thank you. It was just a simple diamond necklace, but it meant a lot to me. It was the first gift he had given me in all our years of marriage. Normally, he would just transfer money to my account and let me buy whatever I wanted. Don't overthink it, he said coldly. It's just to keep up appearances. Let's go. Hearing his words, the smile I had just managed to form quickly disappeared. I watched him leave the mansion. I bitterly smiled and looked up, holding back my tears. After gathering my thoughts, I followed him to the car. We both stared out the window, ignoring each other. Don't stray from me when we arrive, he said coldly, still looking out the window. All right, I replied immediately, leaning back in the seat. A few minutes later, we arrived at the venue. Before getting out of the car, I put on a golden mask that covered only half of my face. Enrique also put on his mask and we walked in together. His right hand was possessively around my waist, as if he wanted to show everyone that I belonged to him. Even with our faces partially hidden, we attracted everyone's attention. His parents welcomed us warmly, especially his mother, who quickly came to greet me. Daughter, she exclaimed cheerfully, kissing my cheek, not even noticing Enrique by my side. Happy birthday, I said softly, returning the smile. Thank you. You look so beautiful, no wonder everyone is staring at you, his mother joked. Upon hearing that, Enrique's hand on my waist tightened, but he said nothing. When we sat down, his father's question nearly made me choke. When can we expect a grandchild? He asked. I coughed awkwardly, and Enrique quickly poured me some water and gently rubbed my back. Are you all right, dear? His mother asked, concerned. I tried to smile. I'm fine, I replied, sitting up straight. You're scaring the kids, Javier, Enrique's mother told his father. Enrique and I exchanged glances. I didn't know how he was feeling, but I could sense he was watching me the entire time, even though I avoided looking at him. You've been married for over 2 years. "It's about time you gave us a grandchild," his father joked. I blushed at the comment, unsure of how to respond. "Next month," Enrique suddenly said in a firm voice. I turned my head toward him, stunned. Before I could process his words, he leaned in and kissed me. My heart started pounding wildly. There was no sun that morning. The sky over Madrid was covered with thick clouds, as if the universe sensed the approaching storm. From the kitchen, I heard firm footsteps coming down the stairs. I knew exactly who it was, of course. Enrique moved through the house like a king in a medieval castle. And in some ways he was. But I was not his queen, at least not in the traditional sense. I was a decoration, a trophy in his endless game of power. While I quietly ate breakfast, I felt his presence behind me. He didn't bother to greet me. He simply poured himself some coffee and sat across from me. His gaze was cold, calculating as always. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. It was routine. After all, we had been married for 2 years, but we treated each other like complete strangers. "There's another dinner tonight," he finally said, breaking the silence. "With whom?" I asked, pretending not to care while stirring my spoon. "With the governor and some investors." "Do what you do best. Smile and stay quiet," he replied without looking at me. His indifference irritated me, but it no longer hurt as it once did. I had learned to hide my emotions behind a mask of apathy. However, something in his tone made me look up. There was a shadow in his eyes, a flicker of impatience that wasn't usual for him. Something was off. Hours later, as I was getting ready for the evening, I decided to explore his office. It was a place I rarely dared to enter, but something inside me pushed me to do it. Enrique had always been meticulous, but in his rush, he had left some documents scattered across his desk. My eyes landed on an envelope stained with coffee drops. I carefully opened it, and my heart stopped as I read its contents. It was a letter addressed to one of his trusted men, ordering my elimination. My hands trembled as I held the paper, but my mind remained cold. This wasn't just a murder order. It was a carefully crafted plan to make it look like an accident. Enrique planned to get rid of me after the dinner. I carefully closed the envelope and left the office before anyone could see me. In my room, as I slipped into the red dress he had chosen for me. I finished adjusting the red dress in front of the mirror, my hands still trembling slightly. The fabric hugged my body perfectly, as if it had been tailor-made for this occasion. And maybe it had been. Enrique was always meticulous about appearances, but now I knew that this attention to detail was part of something much bigger, something deadly. I stared at my reflection, trying to recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes were empty, but there was a spark I hadn't seen in years. Anger, frustration, a nearly primal will to survive. I calmly descended the stairs, feeling the weight of the necklace Enrique had given me days before. A rare gift, supposedly to maintain appearances. How ironic. Now I understood. He was preparing me to be displayed one last time before being discarded like another piece in his cruel game. Enrique was waiting for me in the foyer, impeccable in his suit. When he saw me, he gave me a cold smile. "You look stunning," he whispered with venom. "Thank you," I murmured, controlling the tremble in my voice. He offered me his arm, and I took it, feeling the coldness of his skin. We walked to the car in silence. On the way to the dinner with the governor and the investors, I stared into the night through the window. My heart was pounding, but my mind was already forming a plan. I couldn't simply run. Enrique had eyes everywhere. If I tried to escape, he would make sure to find me, and this time, there would be no disguised plans. It would be quick and brutal. The solution had to be different. We arrived at the luxurious restaurant, with guards strategically placed. Enrique got out first and, with a rehearsed gesture, opened the door for me. I smiled. A fake smile, but enough to play the role he expected from me. Inside the hall, everything was perfect. Soft lights, the sound of glasses clinking, muffled conversations. I saw the governor and several businessmen Enrique wanted to impress. He placed his hand possessively on the small of my back and guided me to the table, as if we were a happy couple. My eyes scanned the room. Guards. Attentive waiters. No easy way out. The conversations began. Enrique spoke naturally about investments, business, and power. I just smiled and nodded when necessary. Wine was served. Enrique took a sip and offered me the glass. For a moment, I wondered if he had poisoned it. But no. Enrique was too meticulous for something so obvious. He wanted something that couldn't be traced back to him. An accident. A fall down the stairs. A runaway car. A power failure. Something clean. While he talked, an idea took shape. Subtle. Precise. I discreetly grabbed my phone and pretended to check messages. I quickly sent a text to Clara. A former employee Enrique had unfairly fired. I knew she resented him. We weren't friends, but we had something in common. Contempt for that man. I need your help. Urgent. I can pay you whatever you want. Meet me behind the restaurant in 20 minutes. Enrique didn't notice. He was too absorbed in his lies. I pretended I needed to use the restroom. He gave me that calculating look, but simply nodded. I calmly made my way to the service door. The alley was dark, silent. Clara appeared minutes later, suspicious. "What do you want?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "Enrique wants to kill me," I blurted out. Her eyes widened. "That's not surprising. Why should I care?" "Because you hate him as much as I do. And I can make it worth your while. I have access to his safe. Documents. Offshore accounts. I can give you whatever you want." She was silent for a moment, thinking. "What do you need?" "Just a distraction. Nothing major. Just enough to throw him off balance." She smirked. "That I can do." I returned to the table with the same calm expression. Enrique glanced at me and kept talking. Minutes later, a waiter approached and whispered something in Enrique's ear. His brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" I asked, feigning curiosity. "There's a problem in the parking lot. Someone messed with my car." "I'll check." "Stay here." He quickly got up and left. I took a deep breath. This was my moment. I stood and approached the reception desk. I smiled at the receptionist. "My husband asked me to grab the key to the private suite. He forgot it." She hesitated. "Could you show me some ID?" I tilted my head slightly. "You know who he is, don't you? You know what happens to people who disobey him." She paled and handed me the key. I navigated the hallways to the private room where Enrique closed his dirty deals. I opened the safe with the code I had memorized over the years. Documents. USB drives. Fake accounts. I took everything, stuffed it in my purse, and quietly slipped out. Outside, I heard shouting. Clara had done her part. I didn't look back. I got into the first taxi I saw, to the airport. Fast. As the car pulled away, I smiled for the first time in years. This wasn't just an escape. I had proof. Enrique couldn't hunt me down without destroying himself. This time, the game was mine. Every mile the taxi drove, the weight of fear and anxiety slowly transformed into something solid, determination. This was no longer just about escaping. It was the beginning of my revenge. I wasn't going to hide anymore. Not after everything Enrique had done to me. I now had everything I needed to destroy him. My destination wasn't the airport. I asked the driver to drop me off at a discreet hotel in the city center. I needed time, silence, focus. I entered the room and spread out all the documents and USB drives I had taken from a safe across the bed. They were forged contracts, money laundering records, evidence of bribery, and even assassination orders. Enrique had always been careful, but his arrogance made him believe no one would dare betray him. I spent the entire night analyzing every paper. Every detail, every number, every name. Among the documents, I found something even more valuable. Offshore bank accounts linked to influential politicians and powerful businessmen. Enrique wasn't acting alone. He was just the tip of a massive network of corruption. The next morning, I reached out to Clara. I couldn't do this alone. When we met, she seemed uneasy. "You made it out alive," she said, crossing her arms. "Enrique has no idea how close I am to destroying him. But I need your help. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about tearing down everything he's built." I showed her the documents, and Clara's eyes widened in shock. "My God, you have everything." "Exactly. But I need to get this information to the right people. And I need to do it without raising suspicion." Clara knew people. Former contacts who hated Enrique as much as we did. We built an information network. I sent copies of everything to investigative journalists, prosecutors, and even Enrique's rivals. I knew that in this rotten world, the truth alone wasn't enough. But truth combined with power was deadly. The following days were pure chaos. Headlines exposed Enrique's crimes. Leaked recordings of incriminating conversations, forged contracts, and connections to murders spread everywhere. Companies severed contracts with him. Politicians avoided him like a plague. But I knew he wouldn't fall without a fight. On the third day, I received a call from Enrique. I answered in silence. Do you think you've won? His voice was filled with rage. This isn't over, Mariana. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. No, Enrique. The one who didn't know who they were dealing with was you. And I hung up. But that wasn't enough. Enrique was still free. And that wasn't acceptable. He needed to feel everything he had put me through. I went after Eduardo, Enrique's personal lawyer. He had always been loyal, but he was also greedy. He knew too much and would stay quiet for the right price. How much is Enrique paying you to stay silent? I asked, sitting across from him. He looked at me with disdain. Enough to ignore you. What if I double it? I slid an envelope toward him, filled with evidence of illegal transactions he was involved in. Eduardo paled. Either you help me or you fall with him. He gave in. With Eduardo's help, we froze Enrique's accounts, blocked his assets, and triggered hidden debts with old partners. His empire started to crumble, piece by piece. But the final blow was still missing. I discovered where Enrique was hiding, in an isolated mansion, surrounded by security. I knew I couldn't confront him directly, but he was alone, without allies. That's when I did the unthinkable. I contacted Vargas, one of Enrique's oldest rivals. A man just as ruthless as Enrique, but smart enough to recognize an opportunity. I want to hand Enrique over to you. With evidence. Everything. Vargas didn't refuse. Their war was old, and Enrique was now vulnerable. That same week, Enrique was captured by Vargas's men and handed over to the authorities, not out of honor, but because Vargas wanted to erase any connection to him. Enrique was arrested, charged with money laundering, murder, and organized crime. At his trial, I saw him in handcuffs, worn down. The eyes that once intimidated me were now empty. For the first time, he wasn't in control. He was sentenced to life in prison. All his allies were either arrested or fled the country. Clara opened her own cybersecurity company. With my financial support, she became a leader in the industry. Eduardo vanished. After doing his part, I never heard from him again. I imagine he went into hiding before someone decided to silence him. And me? I invested part of the recovered money in foundations supporting women who, like me, had lived under the shadow of dangerous men. I rebuilt my life far from that past. Today, I wake up in peace, without fear, without shadows. Enrique rots in a cell, powerless, penniless, and alone. I rebuilt everything. And most importantly, I won.